All right, so good evening once again, and welcome to this evening's lecture. As I said at the beginning, I'll try to keep within an hour, maximum an hour, maybe 15 minutes. All right, so this particular lecture is in two folds. We have the intro to human resource management, the motivation of employees. Somehow they go hand in hand, okay, but to save time, we will focus on HR. If there's enough time, maybe I'll touch a bit on the motivation aspect. So as we always do, these are our learning outcomes. So I will not bore you by reading them. I believe that you will do that when you take the notes. Okay, so when we talk about human resources, the basic foundations of human resource management is what we refer to as the set of organizational activities, which is directed at attracting, developing, and maintaining an effective workforce. And so human resource is critical for effective organizational functioning. So there's no institute or institution or organization that can function without human resource. Okay, so in the past, or sometimes it's still called personnel. Okay, and it used to be relegated to second-class status in most organizations, but now the importance of human resource has grown extensively over the decades, and so it's critical. It has become a crucial aspect of organizations. All right, so it's a valuable means for improving productivity, and its awareness, and there's much awareness, I should say, about the cost associated with poor HR. So companies, organizations, or businesses are a reflection of their human resource. So in our local context, Ghana, where there is a school of thought that public organizations as against private organizations, there is always a difference. So for instance, if you go to a private health facility, it is expected that the kind of medical care you receive or the professionalism is better compared to the public, health facility. Why is that so? Is it not human beings who work in both institutions? Definitely, yes. But then there is that difference in the awareness that if you put in the wrong people or you do not pay attention, close attention to your human resource, it can be costly to the organization. Then we can also talk about human capital. Human capital here reflects an organization's investment in attracting, retaining, and motivating an effective workforce. So just as when it comes to like financial capital being an indicator of a firm's financial resources and reserves, human resource or human capital also serves as a tangible indicator of the value of the people who comprise an organization. All right. Now, we want to look at what we term human resource planning. So it is a systematic analysis of jobs within an organization. And it is also a process which is used for determining and assuring that the organization will have an adequate number of qualified persons available at proper times and performing their jobs. So then analysis is, the whole HR planning is a systematic analysis of jobs within an organization. So most firms have trained experts who handle these analysis. So, sorry, I mean, who handled the whole process? So we have a job analysis, job description, and job specification. So the job analysis is as a result of, or will result in two things. Okay, it will result in the job description and it will result in the job specification. So the analysis here basically is done because we need to assess the needs or the human resource needs of the organization and ensure that we develop appropriate selection methods and we create relevant performance appraisal systems. How do we evaluate the performance of staff or employees? And also we ensure that equitable compensation rates are also set. So the job analysis will then result in two things. The first one is job description, which is a description of the duties and responsibilities of a job, the working conditions, the tools, material, equipment, etc., that is needed for the worker to perform it. Then we have the job specification. So the job specification here, we are looking at the necessary skills and the abilities and any other credentials or qualifications that is required by a job. So for instance, a first level accounting officer in let's say a manufacturing firm requires to have a minimum of HND. Okay, HND accounting. He should be computer literate. He should have a 2 years work experience. Okay, so those are the specifications. And then with the job description, this is where the workers or the worker or the employee, the list of the duties and the responsibilities are documented. Okay, so for the accounting officer or the accounting person, probably the description will be that he's to manage the accounts of all the departments. He should submit reports on a weekly basis and those things. So all those descriptions will be documented in the job description. All right. Then we also can look at the whole HR planning process itself properly. So as you can see in this exhibition, the starting point in attracting qualified human resource plan, to be able to attract the qualified human resources, the planning process or the HR planning process. Okay, so it begins specifically, HR will do the job analysis, forecasting for the demand and supply of labor. And so the forecasting for demand here is meaning that when you are forecasting, you are projecting or estimating what the needs of the organization will be in terms of supply of labor and in terms of demand for labor. Then you must develop a plan to match demand with supply. So that is what the HR process planning process is about. So let's look at the forecasting of the HR demand and supply. So after the manager comprehends the various jobs that has to be performed within the organization, then they can start planning the organization's future needs. So the manager starts by assessing trends in the past, HR usage, or what has been the trends in the past within the organization, and would also assess future organizational plans and any general economic terms. So the forecasting the supply of labor is can be put in two folds: the internal supply and the external supply. Okay, so the internal supply is the number and type of employees who will be in the firm at some future dates. Okay, whereas the external supply is the number and type of people who will be available for hiring from the labor market at large. So for example, let us use GCTU as an institution. So GCTU might have a plan that in the next 5 years, we will be rolling out some new programs. And so we will need faculty to handle such programs, to teach such programs. Probably they want to expand their research capacity, or to be more efficient in research. So they would want to employ research persons. Okay, so how many and what will be their qualification? So that number and the type of employees which will be in the firm at, let's say, maybe 2-3 years from now, will be the forecasting of the internal supply. Then the external supply, it means that then we are looking at those people who will be hired from outside the organization. So for the internal supply, there's a possibility that there are individual employees within the organization who have the capability or who are currently developing the capability, so they can in the next 2-3 years, they can actually occupy those positions or those roles. But the external forecasting of is more or less looking at the larger labor market. All right. So I hope you get the distinctions clear. Now, in as much as we have established that HR is a critical, function or very important element in the success of organizations, there is a need to also look at how HR, will translate into organizational effectiveness, so that we don't have a situation where the organization is losing or the organization is failing to be effective. So effective organizations must have vision, mission, and strategy. We have talked about these under planning, so I will not go into that. Secondly, successful companies should have the following attributes. They must have a participative style of management. So participative style of management means that top level management, middle level, lower level are engaged in discussions, are engaged or collaborating. So it is not the subordinate superior kind of relationship, but the kind of management style that encourages participation in decision making, in developing plans and all that. Despite that, final decision making in most cases lies with top management because they have to take responsibility, but there should be that kind of participation. Communication with all levels of employees. Communication is key. Making sure that you are communicating the vision of the organization, the mission, the strategy, the core values, and everything that has to do with the core business of the organization. Promotion from within. Ensure that promotion comes from within, so that there is that system of fairness and everyone has a fair chance at getting promoted or getting upgraded. Training of employees is very critical in modern day business and running of organization, and also rewarding of good work. All right, rewards here can be both extrinsic or intrinsic, which we'll look at in our next topic, which is motivation. And so these are very important attributes of successful companies. So now if we look at most successful companies, like some of the telcos or the finance and investment firms, or the tech companies like Microsoft, Apple, YouTube, Google, one thing that one can question is what makes these organizations so successful. All right. I would want to argue that to a large extent, it is because of the kind of employees they have or how they treat their employees. All right. And so it goes a long way to reflect on the success of the organization. So it is important that as we work, or as we even hire people to work for us, we factor in these attributes in order to get to be more effective in our work or in our businesses. Now, there has been lots that has been said on contribution of HR to organizational effectiveness, and some of these include, I'll just touch on them, ensuring that we assist everybody to reach their goals. And so it's not a competition between finance department and marketing department and records or procurement and logistic. No, there should be that system where each person or everybody is on board, all right, because we win as a team. Efficient use of skills and abilities. So people have varied skills, or people are dynamic, all right, people have varied abilities. So making sure that we harness all of these skills and abilities to the contribution of organizational effectiveness. Training and motivating employees, that is very important. Job satisfaction and self-actualization. These are key concepts in motivation. So I will touch on them in the next topic. A desirable quality of working life. This is very, critical point, which unfortunately in our part of the world, most organizational managers don't focus on the quality of working life. And so a recent publication I saw, I think the most happiest people in the world are in Finland, because Finland has a system where everybody has a desirable quality of working life, or majority, I should say, okay? So it's not just about you work Monday to Friday or one day to Saturday, and you have some few paid leave days during the week, during the year, but you have a very desirable quality of work life, in the sense that when you wake up in the morning, you are excited about going to work. Your workplace has become like a second home, so to say, okay? And ensuring that we maintain ethical policies and socially responsible behavior, okay? Managing change to advantage of individuals and public, and executing HR functions in a professional manner. So all of these are contributing factors to organizational organizational effectiveness. Okay, so now we're going to look at the other aspect of the HR planning process. So the HR planning is the process by which the manager ensures that there is the right number and kinds of capable people in the right place and at the right time. And it is the starting point for attracting qualified human resources. And so this is the start point for every HR manager, ensuring that at the right time and at the right place, we have the right number and the adequate in terms of capability of the workers available. Okay. Now, when managers have determined that new employees are needed and understand the legal context in which they operate, they must then turn their attention to recruiting, or what we call staffing or hiring, okay? So this involves two processes, okay? Internal recruiting and external recruiting. So internal recruiting considers present employees as candidates for openings, all right? So within the organization, let's say some people have gone on retirement, or some have gone on early retirement, or some vacancies are created because some people went resigned. Then HR must ensure that there are people within the organization to occupy or to fill those vacant positions. Then we also have the external recruiting, where we attract persons outside the organization to apply for jobs. So no matter the circumstances, both the external and internal staffing starts with effective recruiting. So what do we mean by effective recruiting? Okay, so there are some techniques that needs to be followed in order to do, or certain means by which we can recruit. We can recruit or hire through advertisements. So these days, because of the technology age, sometimes you are reading an article online and some job opening pops up. There are job recruitment sites like LinkedIn, where you can connect professionally. There are other ones like Jobberman, Ghana Jobs, and so many of them all over the internet. Recruitment through consultants and labor agencies. Okay, in Ghana here we call them, what's the name? Recruitment agencies, yes. And we can also recruit through existing employees. So maybe employee referral. So I know of a friend who has just finished his PhD and is looking for a teaching job. I can make that recommendation to my HOD or to my dean, and the person will go through the process and be recruited. Personal approach. So you go directly in person. Okay, maybe at church, you know that, okay, the MD of this particular bank is a church member. So you go after church, whilst you are socializing, you tell him that, oh, so you introduce yourself, make yourself known professionally, and probably through that you could get a job opening. Recruitment through radio, TV, and the internet. These are popular means of recruiting. Then after recruiting, we go to what we call the selection. Okay, so this is where the actual selection, or where we pick the candidates. Okay, so there are certain steps. So most organizations will do a preliminary screening. So applicants might have to submit their CVs to the HR office, and then they will go through their CVs. That's why it's very important to have a good CV, a CV that is that can sell you. When I say sell you in a positive way, okay, that can market you well professionally. And then we have the intensive assessment. So here, there are some organizations that do psychological testing or diagnostic interview. Now, the psychological testing is more of the aptitude tests. Okay, so sometimes organizations would ask you to come and write an aptitude test. So it's more or less to test your either quantitative or verbal reasoning and general questions or surrounding the job, things of that nature. I remember after my first degree, I wrote a couple of those exams. It wasn't quite interesting then, but when I look back, I thank God for the opportunity. Then the interview proper, okay. So once that is done, then the final selection, and then the placement and induction is done. So the next diagram shows that once the selection of the human resource is done, we need to, go through some induction, or we have to do what we call orientation. Okay, so the recruiting process will attract a pool of applicants. So once the application forms have been submitted, it means that the process has begun in order to select someone to hire, or a group of people. The intent of the selection process is to gather from applicants the information that will predict their job success, and then to hire the candidates likely to be most successful. So some organizations can use application forms, tests. I talked about aptitude tests, interviews, the polygraph. Mostly it's in I think the security service. Do the security services still use them? I'm not too sure. Drug tests, I believe the security services, yes, you need to do some drug tests. Credit checks, more like background checks, or to see if you have any criminal records, and then your references. So you might be asked to submit some references. So most often, most students, when they complete their program, they call back that, Madam, I need a reference letter for my application to postgraduate studies and things like that. So I would be asked to write about your academic capability and what I know about you as an individual, things of that nature. So these are some of the selecting processes for human resource selection. Then when people work for a business organization, they expect to be paid. And most workers today also expect certain benefits from their employers. So it is a major factor in retaining skilled workers in the company. Compensation systems is a major factor because nobody wants to work for free, including myself. I mean, some jobs, yes, I will do pro bono, but not everything. Okay, so it is important that human resource managers put in a very good compensation system. So the compensation system is just the total package of rewards that organizations provide to individuals in return for their labor. Okay, so we have wages, we can talk of salaries. Okay, so compensation in form of money paid for time work, that is wages. So most often it is those in the informal sector or the technical people. So if they work 8 hours, they are paid for the number of hours, or they are paid, what I think in Ghana we call it by day or something, especially those who are in the building industry, the masons and carpenters and the like. Then we have salary. So compensation in the form of money paid for discharging the responsibilities of a job. So mostly it is done at the end of a month. So a salaried executive could earn about $100,000 per year. And he or she will be expected to achieve results, even if it means working 5 hours in a day and then 15 hours on another day. So salaries are not expressed as an amount paid per month or a year. Okay, it's not necessarily that, so it can vary. Now, one of the challenges with ensuring that we maintain, after attracting or making sure that we maintain the qualified human resource, is to develop qualified workers. So we want to talk about human resource development. Okay, human resource development. So it is important to ensure that whilst people are on the job, we initiate programs to enhance their capabilities or their capacity. So there are some development methods. So we can talk of informal development in the work situation. So whilst you are on the job, informally you are gaining knowledge or you are acquiring knowledge. Okay. Then there are formal developments in the work situation. So those are more or less organized or structured, trainings and programs. Then we can also talk about informal development outside the work situation. So sometimes out of work, you can, these days, because of technology, you can go online and find so many resources that can help you enhance your career development goals. Okay. Likewise, the formal development outside the work situation. Some of you have enrolled in this program because you are seeking to advance your career or your career progression. And so it's one of the, formal development outside the work situation. And also performance appraisal, where at the end of the year or maybe quarterly or midway in the year, assessment is done to assess or evaluate whether the task that you have been assigned, your responsibilities, are being carried out well. And then based on that, maybe you'll be promoted or you receive a salary increment. And so once this is done, you need to also ensure that these qualified workers who you have spent money, or as an organization, if you have spent money to train them or to develop them, you must keep them. Okay, so compensation of employees and the types of compensation is very important. So here we can talk about tangible compensation, that is cash compensation. We can talk about intangible compensation, that is, for instance, like free gym, counseling, maybe some holidays abroad, etc., etc. Now, the amount of compensation too is also key, it's very important. Some organizations, what they do is that they give you, especially those who are in the sales, marketing and sales work jobs. Okay, so they give you targets. Once you're able to hit or meet the targets or exceed the targets, it comes with a lot of what compensation or benefits. All right. So yeah, this is where the first part ends. I'll pause if there's any questions now. All right, so the second topic for tonight is motivating employees. So the reason I combine it because some aspects of the topic was touched in the previous one, the HR. Okay, so I decided to merge the two. All right, so as usual, we have the learning outcomes. We'll define motivation, we look at the main types, and then some of the how do you call it, theories, motivation theories, the popular ones. There are so many of them, but this is an introductory course, so I will just restrict ourselves to these few ones. All right, so when we say motivation, what exactly are we saying? It's simply defined as what causes people to behave as they do, or the driving force that encourages an individual to behave in particular ways as they seek to achieve a goal. So simply put, motivation is that which causes people to behave as they do, or that driving force that encourages an individual to behave in a particular way in order to achieve a goal. Because we are looking at motivation here in general, but then we want to look at motivation in terms of what? Employee motivation. All right. So the nature of motivation. So it is defined as the psychological forces within a person that determines, one, the direction of behavior in an organization, two, the effort or how hard people work, and three, the persistence displayed in meeting goals. So it is that psychological force. It means that it is something that comes psychologically. Okay, it's not an external force within the environment or whatever, but it's that psychological force within a person, an individual, and it determines the direction of that individual's behavior in the organization. And it also determines the effort or how hard people work in an organization. And it also determines the persistence that is displayed by the individual or the employee in meeting the goal. So there are two main broad types, the intrinsic and the extrinsic. The intrinsic is the behavior performed for its own sake. So it's a type of motivation that comes from performing the work. All right, so as a lecturer, when I have a goal, let's say my goal or my target is that I have to at least be able to cover not less than 80% of my course outline before the semester ends, it becomes my motivation. Okay, it is what drives me. Okay, it is what pushes me to actually perform my work. Then the extrinsic motivation is the behavior performed to acquire rewards. So this is a motivation source that is as the result of an action. Okay, it is the consequence of an action, that is a reward. So it means that whilst I'm doing this, at the end of the month, I know that there will be a reward for my work, which is in terms of what? Salary. Okay, so intrinsic is the behavior which is performed for its own sake. In other words, It is that motivation that drives the individual to perform his or her work. Whilst the extrinsic is more or less the consequence of an action, that is the reward that we receive. So we behave in a certain way to acquire rewards. That's the extrinsic. Okay. Now let's look at the motivation theories. We have three main ones that we want to look at. We have Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, McGregor's theory X and Y, and Frederick Herzberg's two-factor theory. Oh, a lot of people are leaving, or it's network issues. Okay. All right, so let's look at the first one. So Abraham Maslow, who lived between the year 1908 and 1970, developed one of the most widely recognized need theories, which is the theory of motivation based upon a consideration of human needs. So he categorized human needs into 5 levels, okay? So he talked about need levels, okay? So starting from the lower level needs, so he says that the lower level needs must be satisfied before higher level needs are addressed. So he has physiological needs, safety needs, belongingness, esteem needs, and self-actualization needs. So the physiological needs are the basic needs. Okay, we all need food, we need water, we need shelter. Okay, safety needs. So security, stability. Okay, belongingness. We all want to feel loved or have social interaction. Then the esteem needs, to feel good about oneself. And then the self-actualization is to realize one's full potential. But other scholars have argued that a human being can actually never reach his or her full potential in life. So there are some arguments in favor and some against. All right. So what Maslow was argument was all about is that every human being has a basic need for food and water, and you cannot, if you have not satisfied the first level, you cannot move to the next or the third or the fourth. So a man who is hungry, who has no food, who has no water, who has no shelter, will have no business trying to realize his full potential, because you have not even satisfied your basic need for life, to even survive, let alone your need for safety, security, and stability. Now, examples here are related to employees. So the physiological needs, basic pay level to buy items. So yes, you need money to buy food, to pay for water, to pay for rent and all that. Job security and health insurance for your safety. Interpersonal relations, to attend, events, parties, weddings, even these days, funerals. People go and meet their future wives and husbands at funerals. With self-esteem, promotion and recognition at the workplace. And then with the self-actualization, using your abilities to the fullest. That's what, these are some of the examples. And so Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, I would say, most of the foremost motivation theories, which on which the other motivation theories also was built on. Okay, so this is also another example where we use Maslow's hierarchy of needs to describe fulfillment of the job and fulfillment on the job. In some diagrams, you see it as a triangle. Okay, you see it as a triangle. It doesn't mean this is wrong. In most texts, it is captured in the form of a diagram, but the text I'm using is relating it to when how to get motivation whilst on the job and whilst off the job. So when you are not working, you need food, water, and oxygen. And when you are working, you need heat, air-based salary. So heat here, because we are in the temperate, in the tropical zones, we don't need heat, we need air conditioning. This is an American text, so that is why they put here heat. For safety needs, examples are, as when you're off the job, you want freedom from war, pollution, and violence. And when you're on the job, you want a safe work, you want fringe benefits, and you want job security. Okay. So all of these are examples. Okay. All right. So let me move on to the next motivation theory, which is the Douglas McGregor's theory X and Y, another very interesting motivation theory. So Douglas or McGregor, most often you see McGregor theory X and Y. So he based his work on the assumption that there are two categories of employees, theory X and then theory Y. So according to McGregor, theory X assumptions, the employee is naturally lazy on pejuma. He or she would not want to work, is naturally lazy, dislikes work, would avoid it at all costs. That particular employee must be forced, supervised, controlled, directed, even threatened with punishment before he or she will work. They will prefer direction and avoid responsibility. They don't have any or little ambition, but they want security. They are passive or childlike. You have to create strict rules and define rewards. So such employees, when you identify them, you have to be a supervisor who is giving them strict instructions, threatening them with punishment, etc., etc. So that is what McGregor says about theory X assumptions. Now, theory Y, such an employee is not lazy, does not dislike work, naturally is self-directed or self-motivated, is that kind of person who likes to create initiative, seeks responsibility, has imagination, creativity, and has intellectual potential intellectual potential only partially utilized, okay? It's an active person or adult, okay? So how does this help managers, in motivating the employees? So if you have two workers, let me use Kwamena and Abeku. So Kwamena is always coming to work late. Kwamena is always late in submitting his assignment or doing his task, performing his job. So always you have to be strict on him. So Kwamena is a theory X, person or employee. But Abeku is always early at work or reports to work on time, is the type that always looks for opportunities to do what? To create ideas or to come up with innovative ideas, is always ready to work and is responsible and all that. So when you are motivating a theory X person, once you know all these factors, it goes a long way in knowing how to actually motivate a theory X person and how to motivate a theory Y person. Okay. Then the last but not the least is Herzberg's motivation hygiene theory, which is also popularly called the two-factor theory. So Herzberg determined that one set of factors caused job satisfaction, which he referred to as motivators. Then another set of factors tends to cause job dissatisfaction, which he referred to as hygiene factors. So let's look at these factors. So you realize from the diagram, we have the motivators at the top and the hygiene factors at the bottom. Then we have a line in between. So at the top, we have the situation where that when all these factors are met, there is high level of job satisfaction. But when they are not, then we have the area of dissatisfaction, and employees are highly dissatisfied. And in the middle, they are neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. They are just in between. So hygiene factors influence level of job dissatisfaction, and motivators influence job satisfaction. Now, the examples here for motivators include achievement, recognition, responsibility, the work itself, and your personal growth. So when you have you're able to achieve your result, your goals, or achieve your targets or your objectives, definitely as an employee, you become very satisfied with the job. You are recognized for your efforts. There's responsibility, and the work itself, it gives room for personal career development or growth. So all these factors have a long way to influence the level of an employee's job satisfaction. However, if you look at the area of dissatisfaction, according to Mansberg, hygiene factors have can actually influence the level of dissatisfaction. So the working conditions, if the working conditions are poor, the person might not necessarily leave the job, but he or she will be dissatisfied. Okay, if the pay is poor, like the pay of most teachers and health workers and most workers in this part of the world. Okay, so you don't have job security. The pay is always, dissatisfactory. Okay, the company's policies, maybe there are some policies within the company that are not helpful, that are not helping you as an individual, employee, and the organization as a whole, where the supervisors, you don't have that participative style of management and all that, where interpersonal relationships are very tensed, and always there is conflict at the workplace. These factors tend to cause this job dissatisfaction. And so the hygiene factors, or what he calls the needs factors, they relate to the physical and the psychological context of work. All right, they relate to the physical and psychological context of work. So when hygiene needs are not met, workers are dissatisfied, simply as such. So for instance, your job, your salary doesn't come on time, or you are paid very low wages, a salary, that will cause what? Job dissatisfaction. Okay. Then with the motivators, they are related to nature of the work and how challenging it is. So they are the outcomes like autonomy, growth, advancement in your career, more responsibility, recognition, achievement, interesting work. So in a nutshell, motivators will not demotivate employees if they were absent. So those factors that will lead to satisfaction, it does not mean that if they are not there, employees will not be motivated. But if motivators were provided, they would increase employee motivation. That is what it means. All right. So there are some review questions here, which you can, in your own free time, you can look at them. I think I've been able to work within the 1 hour. Let me stop recording.